Little baby Hannah was just 13 months old when her mother, Chloe, took her life, stabbing the baby to death in their home in Canton, Georgia. Why would a mother take her baby's life in such a violent manner? What was going on behind closed doors? Prosecutors say it was a non-traditional lifestyle involving polygamy and a cult. And Chloe was upset that her so-called sister wives were getting more attention and more freedom. And it was a murder and attempted suicide fueled by some sort of twisted jealousy. But the defense paints a different picture, a mental breakdown by Chloe, who was, they say, legally insane at the time, suffering from delusional thinking. Court TV is in the courtroom as this heartbreaking trial gets underway. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard on this Tuesday night. You know, there's a subject that is interesting because in the United States, you talk about the word polygamy and it has, you get it, there's a reaction, right? I just said it and you have a reaction. You know, polygamy illegal in the United States. Other cultures, it's fine, it's welcomed in other parts of the world. Everyone has an opinion about it. And by itself, if you have a situation with all consenting adults and they don't get legally married, it does exist, despite the fact that it's shunned upon and illegal. But if you're consenting adults and you end up in this relationship with, you know, one woman and one or more, or two or more men, or one man more likely, and two or more women, and they're living as husband and wives, even though they may not be legally married. I mean, it happens. It exists in this country, okay? And by itself, doesn't usually end up here on court TV. When it does end up on court TV, usually it's associated with some form of a cult. And we've covered cult cases here on court TV. We've covered some famous ones and other ones that aren't quite as famous. But in these situations, you usually have that one man who has this following and is in this relationship with all the women who are his followers. And in some cases, in some of these cults, his wives. And depending upon how that sort of transpires, it can end up on court TV, whether they act as a gang and go out and commit crimes, or if some of the so-called wives are underaged and not consenting to this. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we've covered it here at court TV. I want to introduce you to a woman named Chloe Driver. Now, this is a woman who's accused of killing her baby, and she did kill her baby. She absolutely did, and that's not going to be disputed in this case. But this is a woman who seemingly was in some sort of a non-traditional relationship with her husband / leader. Like it's an important part of all this. You know, what exactly was the nature of her relationship with her husband and the other women in this family, this relationship, this cult, if you want. And all of that can be looked at a couple different ways. Like one way, like she's one of the wives of this man and has a baby, but the baby's getting in the way of her being able to get the attention of her husband, to get that time and that attention and that freedom that is restricted when you have to care for a child. I mean, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is like, what happened in this nomadic, cultish, polygamous relationship that she was in? Did it help fuel some level of mental illness? And that's what the jury's got to figure out. They're gonna have to figure out why she killed her baby. And it's not necessarily going to be easy, because you just think about someone who takes the life of a beautiful, innocent child. You think there's definitely something wrong with them. There's no doubt that there's something wrong with them, anyone that would do that. But is it to the level of legal insanity, or is it more sort of in the culture of this relationship and some level of or strain of jealousy or wanting to get more attention from her husband / cult leader. It's not going to be an easy case. Take a look, because it's complicated, it's layered. Here's more.
December 9th, 2020, police respond to a call at 2:30 p.m. in the Mountain View subdivision of Canton, Georgia. Once they arrive at the home, they discover 20-year-old Chloe Driver and her 1-year-old daughter suffering from stab wounds. Chloe and her daughter Hannah were taken to nearby hospitals. WAGA spoke with police.
We learned to find out it looked like it'd be an attempted suicide, murder-suicide.
Hannah died and Chloe was arrested after her release and charged with malice, felony murder, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children in the first degree. Police reports allege Driver admitted to stabbing her daughter multiple times. Driver's defense is claiming an insanity defense, saying that she is not responsible for her actions due to mental illness at the time of the crime.
And take a look, there's little baby Hannah. Come on. Come on. And that's why people will look at this beautiful child and say, there's got to be something wrong with you. Now, she also tried to take her own life, right? So clearly there was something going on mentally, but what was it? And how detached from reality was she? Or was it about this man? I want this man. He's not giving me the attention that I want, the attention that I deserve. Well, big day inside the courtroom. Opening statements sort of lays the foundation for the jury, each side laying out what they believe the evidence will show, but trying to give the jurors a filter through which to see and hear all the evidence. Let's take a look. We'll begin with the state, then you'll hear from the defense.
When Jason and Benjamin were distracted, moving things out of the basement, Chloe Driver, at some point, went down to the kitchen, got a knife out of the knife block, returned to the room with Hannah, locked the door behind her, and repeatedly stabbed Hannah to death with this knife. She then took the knife and stabbed herself in the neck. This is where Hannah Driver bled to death. You will hear that Jason and Benjamin were out in the driveway. They were getting ready to go. Sarah and Jessica had come down. They were in the driveway getting ready to go. And Benjamin went upstairs to get Chloe and the baby. And the door was locked. And he heard noises. And he panicked. And he kicked the door down. And he found the scene of his 13-month-old daughter bleeding to death on the bed and Chloe on the ground with a knife wound to her neck as well. You'll see evidence of him kicking in the door. And you'll hear the witnesses who said they heard the most blood-curdling scream from him. What did you do? What did you do? You will see the body cam footage of the first responders on the scene who rushed in to try to save the baby and Chloe Driver. And what you will see is Benjamin with his hands on Hannah's neck trying to keep her from bleeding to death, and Jason Spillers, the other man that's a part of this group, with his hands on Chloe's neck trying to save her life. You will see these men were in shock. They were desperately trying to help. And you will see the response of first responders, EMTs, and everybody who did everything they could for Hannah and Chloe. You will hear that Hannah died, that she had 4 stab wounds.
She met up with Benjamin again. He was 38 years old. See, I'll tell you a little bit about Mr. Benjamin Ben Michael. He's not this great character that the state intends to put up here. Not at all. He spends his free time setting up Christian trusts in the name of religion and his wacky beliefs. You will hear that some of these trusts and true contracts that he made with his so-called wives. I'm not even going to attempt to try to explain what these trusts are, because quite frankly, we really don't understand what their thought process is involved in that, and I'm sure Mr. Spillers would love to tell you all about it. You will hear that he had 3 wives at this time. He had Jessica, he had Chloe, he had Sarah. It was a constant indoctrination of an alternative ideology belief system to an already vulnerable young lady. A 17, 18, and 19-year-old woman with a 38, 39, and 40-year-old man. He did assign his wives each alternative names. You'll hear in these calls and interviews they'll refer to her as Kalani. Chloe, initially, was all in this relationship. She really didn't know any better. She was shocked and awed by his personality. She was young and she was vulnerable. She became alienated from her friends and her family, and she did. She followed his teachings and belief system.
It's always like that. It's always an older man with younger women. Time and time again when I cover these stories. Older men, younger women, polygamous relationship, and some level of indoctrination. Let's find out some more about how this all works. Joining me, retired police commander, religious cult expert, host of the podcast Profiling Evil, and the author of the book that you need to read, Deceived. Mike King is with us. Mike, great to see you tonight. Let me start here with that notion. Why is it always, when we end up covering a story with allegations of polygamy or a cult, it's always older men and younger women? Here, I guess they're all in their late teens.
Yeah, and these kind of destructive cults, it's about coercive control, and the best way to coercively control is to have an older person who seems wiser to a young person that's 19 years old looking at somebody 40 and having them project themselves as a prophet of whatever God it is that they believe in, that they can put across ideas and find someone with a like-minded personality. That Chloe clearly must have been intrigued by the doctrine that he was spreading. She must have been influenced at some point to where what would normally be, and I don't know her background, Vinny, but probably a pretty reasonable thinking person, they slowly become indoctrinated, kind of like boiling that frog that we always talk about, to the point that they actually start to sacrifice their own value system, their own morals, and they start to accept the ideology and the leader over anything else. And they're so skilled at separating these people from their support system so that they don't have that reminder that would say to them, something's not right here. All they have are the people who are in the same ideology and same mindset saying this is the pathway we're going forward. So seemingly intelligent people make really terrible mistakes after that.
Well, let's talk about where does the line cross, and where are the people who end up in these cults? Now, usually we cover a story like this, the women in the cult are the victims. This case a little different. She's the defendant, and we're trying to figure out the mindset and where she was at the time of this killing and attempted suicide, a killing of the 13-month-old Hannah. So how detached from reality can someone be when they're in a cult? And when I say detached from reality, like understanding what they're doing, understanding what's right and what's wrong, and being able to process that mentally versus not understanding that and being so detached that you lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's the real question, isn't it? Is there mental illness involved? And regardless, in every case that I've ever looked at, those that I investigated, in cults across the globe that I've looked at, people might have an ideology. They may even commit crime, but they still know what society's standards are, that you don't kill innocent little babies. And so I find myself, Vinny, kind of drawn back and wanting to think a little bit more about what were the precipitating stressors that were going on. When this baby came, did that change her relationship with the cult leader? And all of a sudden she was not in favor as one of the wives, because usually that younger wife's the one that's getting lots of attention from the cult leader, because they always seem to get inspiration that takes them to the pretty new young girls. But nonetheless, all of a sudden she's lost that. So is the murder of that child an attempt to restore her position of having nothing in the way, completely unencumbered, or is she thinking she's some kind of angel of mercy and that she's trying to get out of this group? She doesn't want her baby raised in this group, if in fact this is a coercive group. And I don't know enough about the cult yet to have an opinion, but maybe she's thinking, I'm going to actually be some angel of mercy by getting my child and taking him away from this. And then whether it was a feigned attack or a real attack on herself, trying to extricate herself from it. But regardless, she's going through these processes. She knows what society standards are, and she's choosing to commit a homicide.
And the element of suicide makes this different also, the attempted suicide. I mean, they saved her life. She stabbed herself. In the way, in the stories and cases you've investigated and what you've covered as well, how common is it for someone who is a follower to take their own life on their own? Not like a Jonestown deal where, you know, the leader is telling everyone to do it, but in a situation more similar to this, where someone is taking or attempting to take their own life, sort of unbeknownst to anyone else in the cult.
You know, I am always more concerned, Vinny, about the followers that are trying to prove allegiance to the leader than I am, honestly, about the leader. They espouse all this goofy doctrine, and somehow people pick up and say, I'm going to prove how allegiant I am to this person. And they do cause me more concern. Whether she was suicidal as a result of what was going in there, or whether she all of a sudden realized, what have I done after murdering her child? Or whether this was somehow symbolic. And as we learn more about the wounds and we learn about the doctrine that was being taught, we learn about whether this was somehow symbolic of a sacrificial kind of murder or what. There's just so many questions at this stage of the game. But what's really clear is that she made a really clear decision days after being with her family, days after being what was a support system all her life until she joined this cult. And she walked away from that and made a decision like this.
And what will you be looking for during the course of this trial to understand that relationship and how much control the so-called leader of the cult had over her, and how much her mind was manipulated?
Well, we've talked about this a lot, about the idea that we can get too deep in and spun around the axles too early in the game. So first and foremost, I'm going to be looking for the elements of murder, which are going to be already pretty much agreed on. And now the decision about the forensics and the experts who determine whether she's mentally competent to make decisions. But once those elements of the crime are out of the way and those determinations of whether there's mental illness or if this person really knew what she was doing at the time she committed these homicides, then I'm going down a completely different pathway, because I want to know about the ideology, the belief system, what they think happens when someone dies. Is this doctrine that's taught that you can get rid of someone, like we've seen in the Vallow case or in the Daybell case or others that are similar like this? It's going to boil down to the ideology. But for me, those are usually secondary to first proving those elements.
Mike King, great to have you aboard. As soon as you found out that we were covering this trial and we had this story tonight, I said, get Mike, and I'm so glad we were able to. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm sure glad I was able to come.
All right, we'll see you again soon. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to bring in our think tank. By the way, we have another king coming tonight. Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the murder of nursing student Laken Riley on the University of Georgia campus. The defendant in court, but does not want to be judged by a panel of Georgia citizens and instead requests a bench trial. Why would he do that? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Cortez TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Tyler, why do you think you killed your parents?
This is going to get out of my head. Interview with a Killer. Season finale, Sunday, 8/7 Central. And don't miss the new season coming in 2025, only on Court TV.
Everything she did for her daughter was because she was an incredible mother. The state doesn't want you to consider Chloe a victim of Benjamin or Jason Spillers. But what it is a bigger piece of this puzzle about Chloe's severe and untreated mental illnesses that she suffered in the months leading up to December 8th.
Case. The defense has to try to paint Chloe Driver as a victim, a woman who took a knife and stabbed a 13-month-old baby's neck and killed that beautiful baby. Got to show that she's a victim of this cult leader. To try to show that mentally she was gone. She had been manipulated and controlled and detached from reality. Let's get back to what happened that day now, because this cult is a very nomadic existence. They sort of bounce around and travel around. And at the point of the killing of the child, they were at a man named Gerald Ablin's house. Gerald Ablin took the stand. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about the day the baby was killed in his house.
How long were they there before something significant occurred?
An hour, maybe. I don't really know
Okay.
what the time scale was.
Okay.
Time.
When did you become aware that something was wrong or going on?
When I heard a lot of banging,
Okay.
I was on my call, and I started hearing a lot of screaming and banging from upstairs, and that's when I went upstairs
Okay.
to see what's going on.
Describe to me more what you mean by the sound of banging.
I heard something. I'm sorry. I heard a bunch of screaming from Brian, and
What was he screaming?
Open the door.
Okay.
I think. I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
So I can't say it was open. I don't know what he was screaming. He was going to open the door and banging on the door.
Okay.
And then I heard the crash of the door being kicked in.
Okay.
And that's when I went upstairs. I went upstairs, I saw blood, and I went back downstairs
Okay.
to call 911, and someone else was already calling them, so I didn't.
Someone else had called 911. Let's take a listen.
Where was the baby stabbed at?
In the bedroom.
Where at on the body?
On the neck, right across the neck.
Across the neck, like she was the baby's neck?
Yes.
Are you right there near the baby now?
I think she's getting her still life in her.
They're coming as fast as they can, but we're trying to do something before they get there. I need you to listen to me and do what I'm asking you, okay? I need you to go in there where the baby is at, okay?
Yep.
Okay, are you in there now?
Yes, he's trying to blow air in her mouth.
Okay, is she awake?
No, I don't believe so. Her eyes are opening.
Okay, is she breathing?
Her eyes are open. And she's still making noises. Her heart keeps jumping. And she's making little noises. Yes, they're coming, Peter, coming. And they're...
Okay, is there any serious bleeding?
There's so much blood.
Okay. Let the paramedics tell you now, then I'll tell you exactly what to do next, okay? We're going to have to try and stop this bleeding, okay?
Okay. Yep, we're going to stop the bleeding.
Okay, do not...
To stop the bleeding.
Okay, do not remove... I'm going to tell you how to stop the bleeding. Listen carefully to make sure we do it right. Get a clean, dry cloth or towel and tell me when you have it, okay?
Yes, we've got a shirt.
Okay, there, place directly on the wound and press down the wound.
Okay, there's no blood coming out of the wound, but we're going to put the towel on.
Do not lift it up and look underneath it, and without lifting the clean cloth and towel, let me know if the bleeding has stopped.
Okay. Just keep the towel, keep the shirt on there, hold it really tight. Okay. Yep. They're coming. They're coming as soon as they can. Keep blowing air into her mouth.
Okay, keep doing that, okay? But you got to keep that bleeding like right when you called?
Yeah, screaming, and I was outside. I heard screaming, came up the stairs, and this exact thing is what's happening. It's maybe, from as far as I know, I last heard her make noise like maybe 10 minutes ago.
All right, let's bring in our think tank. Joining me tonight, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King. I promised you another King. Also with us, trial attorney, fellow of the American College Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner. And finally, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor Michael Sterling. Great to see everyone tonight. Thanks so much for being here. Let me start with you, Michael Sterling. You're in Georgia. This case is in Georgia. Legal insanity is the defense. Georgia is a right from wrong state, right? Does she know right from wrong? Is that where we're going with this? We're trying to understand if she understood that sticking a knife into her baby's neck was wrong or not?
Yeah, Benny, Georgia only has two insanity defenses. That's the McNaughton test, which is at the time of what she was doing, did her mental capacity prevent her from understanding the difference between right and wrong? Did she know what she was doing was wrong, or was her mental capacity so diminished that she didn't know right from wrong? The other one is what's called irresistible impulse, meaning that you knew right from wrong, but you were unable to control your actions at the time. So you couldn't help yourself. You did it anyways, despite the fact you knew right from wrong. Those are the two mental insanity defenses for a not guilty verdict, notwithstanding diminished capacity, which would still find you guilty, but would mitigate your punishment potentially. So the question really is going to become, can the defense attorneys, which they seem like they're going with the McNaughton defense, which is she didn't know right from wrong. Her mental capacity was so diminished at the time that she couldn't understand that what she was doing was wrong because of her mental defects at the time of the incident. So the question is going to become, can they convince a jury of that?
You know, Rick, we often look at situations like this, right, where you've got a cult leader, always an older man, young women. These are teenagers, 17, 18, 19 years old at the time that they start, I guess, following him or marry him, whatever the situation is. We often look at them as victims, and that's what the defense was talking about in their opening statement. But there's a baby, and the baby's 13 months. I think that's going to be a huge obstacle here, right? Like, look at little Hannah. I mean, just 13 months old. Can't do anything but just make your heart melt, yet that did not happen here.
But I think that's exactly the affect that she'd want the jury to have. And earlier in the show, you said something that I wrote down, and it was after the defense lawyer had said, "Just look at this, a mother killed her baby," and you said, "Come on," because you thought, who kills their baby? And unless you have a situation where you're not really understanding right from wrong at that moment, then typically people don't do that. And so I think that's what that defense attorney was trying, the affect she was trying to give to that jury so they could come back and say, you know what, who does do that? Who kills their baby? And I think that is where she was going for.
Yeah, and by the way, Rick King using my words against me. Like, I need to take the fifth before I start the show on Tuesdays now. Ann Bremner, it's incredibly tragic, all of this. How important is it going to be for this jury to evaluate this so-called cult leader, the husband? And can he become a big enough villain for this jury to say, oh my goodness, this young woman, she didn't know what she was doing?
Well, that's going to be important. I think it's the only thing they can do, but it didn't help with Charlie Manson, at least with Leslie Van Houten. The other girls just kind of went like lambs to slaughter in their trials. I mean, they went with Charlie, but because they were still, mesmerized by him, I guess. And then look at Lori Vallow, Daybell. I mean, a lot of these different cases, it doesn't get you very far, but that's probably her only hope. But the irresistible impulse, I thought that was interesting what Michael was talking about. Maybe she has a chance with that. Given that she's in this cult and she has bizarre beliefs, etc., and she can put the cult leader on trial. Because what a beautiful baby. And she's so young. I mean, women are often diagnosed in these cases where men get demonized. And maybe that diagnosis kind of defense could work for her.
And Michael, I think where we have to go in this trial, and I said it off the top, it's all about why. Like, what was the motivating factor behind this killing? And while motive isn't an element of the crime, this is what the whole case ends up being about, because she's conceding that she killed the baby, but the question for the jury is going to be why.
Yes, Benny, and the jurisdiction to me is very interesting in this case. I'll actually be in this jurisdiction tomorrow morning in Cherokee County. It's a very, very conservative jurisdiction. Canton, Georgia, Cherokee County, a very conservative jurisdiction, a traditional family values jurisdiction on the one hand, and usually and typically a pro-prosecution jury on the other hand. So you have two really conflicting ideals here, right? You've got a cult leader with multiple wives in a jurisdiction where that's typically not something that's the norm, not accepted. But at the same time, you have a jurisdiction that typically you've got a 99% conviction rate in Cherokee County, a jurisdiction that typically leans towards the prosecution. So I think that's just, the jurisdiction is very interesting and unique in this case.
Absolutely. Same jurisdiction as the burn pile murder trial we just covered. All right, think tank staying with us.